Hello Markham Gardens family, Daniel Markham here with Markham Gardens. Just wanted to cover a subject today that I have been asked several times to give answers on, and I've finally come to the conclusion that there are a lot of people that don't understand how to go about doing this. And so the question that I've been asked quite often is, how do I water my indoor plants? And a lot of people, the way it comes about is they tell me that there's all sorts of problems with their plants. I can't keep plants alive. My plants are always sick. You know, my house is where you take plants to die. I have 10 black fingers instead of green fingers. And this is pretty common. I hear people say this kind of stuff all the time. And what I'm finding after speaking with many of them is that the reason that they can't keep their plants alive is because of bad watering practices. And so today I'm going to take you on this little journey to show you the best method for watering your plants to make sure that they have the highest level of success, and so that you don't run into problems and issues later on with your plants. So hang with me today, and I'm going to walk you through the process. All right, guys, so I want to show you a small collection of plants that we've got in our house. And but before I do that, I want to introduce you guys to the newest member here at the Markham Gardens. His name is Tucker, and he's a mini Australian Shepherd. Let me show you guys real quick. Say hello, Tucker. Look at him. Too close, Tucker. Say hello to Tucker, everybody. All right, so what I've got here, guys, you can see I've got a small collection of indoor plants. We've got some Christmas cactus. We've got some Easter cactus. We've got a Thanksgiving cactus over here. You guys can see we've got spider plants. There's just a plethora of different indoor plants here. And all of these plants right now are in a state of needing to be watered. And so what I've done is I've let everything dry out. That way I can show you guys basically what you're looking at and some of the things to look for. Now, the first one that I want to start with, guys, is this spider plant right here. So one of the common things that you'll see in your plants right before you need to water is you'll start seeing droopage in the leaves. And so you can see here that a lot of these leaves, instead of this leaf standing straight out like this, like it usually would, it is now doing the droop. And so that right there is one of the signs that your plant is going to need water. But more so than just the look of the plants and the leaves drooping and things, what you really want to focus on is your soil. And so the easiest way to do this, and I understand that you're only going to be able to do it if you've tested them several times, is to pick up your plants and feel whether or not there's weight in them from watering. And the only way you're going to be able to do this is to water them, pick up the plants fully watered, see what the weight is, and then you can tell when you come and pick them up that they're going to need water. Another method that you can use is you can see the soil here is beginning to pull away from the edge. So that means that the soil is shrinking, doesn't have any moisture in it, and so it's pulling away from the pot. And so you can also press down into this soil, and you can see, you see I've made a little indentation there. It is dry all the way up till about that first knuckle. It is completely dry. In fact, I'm not feeling moisture in there past that point either. I've let these dry out quite a bit. But one thing to think about is that when you do water these, a lot of people will come over here, they'll take their watering can, they'll pour the water into the top of this, and what you'll notice most of the time is that the water immediately disappears on top and goes straight to the bottom. And so what people don't realize is that that water, because your soil is so dry, it has now become hydrophobic. And hydrophobic meaning that it is shedding water. It cannot absorb the water. It is actually repelling water now. And so that's a property that happens with soil when it begins to dry out. And so what happens is you pour that water in here, it goes right past, bypasses all the root system in the soil, comes right down into the bottom. And a lot of people see the water in the bottom and they go, oh, I've watered it too much, because it is now full of water and it's overflowing overflowing into my tray. And that is not the case, guys. And I'm going to show you today the correct method of doing that to make sure that your plants get watered well. Another thing that you're going to see is if you look at the top of this plant right here, you'll see this soil. It sort of has this white, crusty look to it. And you can see it just looks dry. It's just super, super dry. I mean, we've even got some plants here on the edges that are beginning to dry out. And so all of these plants that are in here, they are definitely in need of watering. But I want to show you today the correct method of watering these plants to make sure that they get fully saturated, that they have all the moisture that they need until the next time that you water them. And I'm going to walk you through some of the negatives of doing it the wrong way. So follow with me. All right, guys, so as you can see here, I have actually not watered the plant in place. So one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they will take a watering can and they will water this plant exactly where it sits. You guys saw that it was sitting on a table around a whole bunch of other ones. Guys, that's the incorrect way of watering. Unless you've got that plant outside that you can pour water into and you don't mind having water cascading off down into the floor somewhere, then you need to take that plant that you've got indoors, you need to take it to a sink or a tub or somewhere where you can run water in this thing until you have fully saturated that soil. Now this soil right here is completely dry. I mean, there is no water in this at all. I mean, it is, and I can tell by the weight of it. And pothos doesn't show it real well. You know, unless you go too far, it'll start dying. But this pothos, you know, most of the pothos don't show that they're actually really, really low in water until it's too late. So, but what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and bring your tray over here too. That way you can carry this back across the house without dripping water everywhere. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this pot and you're going to set it down underneath the sink water and you're going to turn this on. Now you're going to run water into this pot and you can see it's already coming out the bottom there, guys. Okay, so you saw how much I watered right there. Now a lot of people will stop at this point, okay? They've run a little bit of water in there. They're letting that water drain, and a lot of people would think that that is good to go. But I want to show you guys something real quick. So I ran all that water into there. I'm going to go ahead and dig up just a little bit of this soil. Do you see that, guys? So I ran that much water into it. I filled it almost up, and you can see I have dry soil. I just dug right there underneath the surface, and there's already still dry soil in this pot. And so you can see that if I was to just take a watering can and I was to go over and just pour a little bit of water in there, you can see that I wouldn't actually ever saturate the roots. It would actually be wet on the surface and look wet on the surface, and the soil would look like it was totally wet. But you can see all I did was dig down about a ½ an inch and the soil is still dry underneath. And so what you want to do is you want to continue wetting this down. You want to continue running water in this until you have fully saturated that soil. So what I'm going to end up doing here is I'm going to go ahead and fill this up to the brim. Okay? And then I'm going to let this sit here and soak. And once all of this water drains all the way out again, I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to run water through this. I'm going to do it several times to make sure that I get this soil fully saturated. So we can see I pull some more soil back. Look, guys, I still have dry soil. Isn't that crazy? So I'm going to go ahead and run water in this multiple times. I'm going to go ahead and get this fully saturated. That way the root system can fill this entire pot and not just little areas of water. And I'll come right back to you. All right, guys, so I have run water through this pot and through this pot until I know that this soil is fully saturated. And now what I've gone and done is I've taken this pot and I've set it on top of its own tray with water in it. Now, the reason I'm doing this is there's water in the bottom of this tray, and what I want it to do is anything that's not yet saturated inside of this pot, I'm going to fill this bottom piece with water. And that way it is able to wick that moisture up into the pot. And I'm going to let this pot sit here for probably a good 5-10 minutes. Now, I spent a good 5 minutes running water through this pot. But we want to make sure that this gets fully saturated before we put it back on the shelf to sit there until it fully dries out again. You want to go from fully saturated to fully dry, to fully saturated to fully dry. And that basically keeps your plants from being over waterlogged, which causes root rot and causes a lot of other diseases in your plants, but also gives them a long period of time when you fully saturate like this to grow into that full pot of soil to have a nice strong root system to get the maximum amount of growth on your plants. So another thing that I want to touch, guys, is the reason that I've had you take the plant to the sink. See, a lot of people will just water in place. They'll pour water into the pot and then they walk away. And the next time they come to water, they pour water right back into the pot. And so they do that multiple times, and a lot of times people do this for years upon years at a time. And basically what ends up happening is their plants begin to start declining. And the reason why is because the way I explain it is this concept. If you were to take a pot and you were to put it on the stove and you were to put water into that pot and then turn the burner on, and then you let that water fully cook off, and then you add more water to it, and then you let that water fully cook off. And you do that multiple times. Most of us, if you've ever done this before, or you've left tea or you've left water on the stove for too long, you come back and what's in the bottom of your pot? A white residue. Guys, that white residue is hardness that's in the water, but it also contains salts. And so all water, most natural water, if not RO, contains natural salts. And most of you know, if some of you don't, well, I'm going to let you know, plants don't do real well with salt. Now, there are certain types of salt that they do well with, but most table salt and salt that comes directly from water, plants are not going to do well with that. In fact, you can kill weeds and you can kill other plants with salt if you'll take it out and pour it all over the area. And so what happens is that salt residue builds up inside of your pot. Every time it dries out, that water residue, the salt that's in that water, dries out inside the pot. Then you add more and it dries out. Well, after a while, you build up such an accumulation of salt that the plant begins to decline. You're basically growing your plant in a pot of salty soil. And so the reason I've had you take this plant to the sink and water it in the sink and allow that water to run through and down the drain is because you're washing salts out of your soil. Now, keep in mind, you'll also wash your fertilizers. If you have fertilizers in there, it is going to wash the fertilizers out as well. So you will need to add some sort of long-term fertilizer back to your plants. Or even if you use something as basic as Miracle-Gro, liquid fertilizer, you'll have to make sure that you keep up on that schedule when you do that. But you definitely want to take your plants to the sink or the tub or somewhere where you can let that water run through the pot and push all of those salts out of the pot so that the plant doesn't get stuck growing in a pot of salt. And so that's why I've had you do that, guys. But that's the method that we do. And so as you can, it is going to sit here for a while. It's going to go ahead and soak. That water is going to soak up in here. Make sure that this is fully saturated. Now, when I have done that, when that is fully complete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this pot up. I'm going to take the remaining water that's in here and I'm going to pour that out. Then I'm going to go ahead and set this in its place where it goes. Take this plant, put it back onto its tray, and then it's going to sit there, like I said, until it is almost fully bone dry again, just like it was, and then I'll repeat that process again. And so I'm going to go ahead and do one more plant just so you guys can see and walk you through this process one more time. But guys, basically this is it. This is the best method of making sure that your plants aren't building up a salt accumulation, and which causes them to get disease. But you also make sure that you're watering your plants very thoroughly. That way the root system can grow all the way through the pot and fill the entire pot, instead of just filling the tiny little crevices around the edges that actually get water, because you guys saw that the center was still dry and I had poured water in there 2 or 3 times. So give me just a second. Let me grab another plant and I'll walk you guys through the process again. All right, guys, so I've brought in another plant. You can see here, it looks like it's fine. Looks like it's not, low on water. Everything looks fine. It's not declining. There's no major issues with it. You can see here that I've got a leaf that's kind of drying up on the tip just a little bit. And that's because this plant likes to cycle its lower leaves to grow its newer leaves, which you can see are the dark green color. So, but I want to show you guys the process on this one as well. If you come down here to the pot, first thing I do is I pick up this pot, and this pot feels really light compared to what it's supposed to feel like when it's fully saturated. And this pot has a little bit more loose soil in it, so it's not going to be quite as hydrophobic. It's got a little bit more peat moss in this than the other one did. So what I want to do is take it out of its tray. You can see I've brought its tray over here because I'm going to utilize that. I'm going to pop this down here in the sink, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn on my water. And you can see down here, I am just going to go ahead and I'm going to water this pot really well. I'm going to go ahead and fill this up with water. And once I've got it to almost full, I'm going to stop and let it drain. We're just going to keep saturating this soil, guys. We're going to make sure that this whole pot is fully saturated and that all the soil has plenty of water and is no longer dry. And I'm letting all of that drainage come right out the bottom of the pot. So now what's happening is all this water that's in here is soaking into the soil. It's dissolving the salts that are in this soil. And those salts are now coming out the bottom of the pot and washing away and leaving the plant, so that the plant is not sitting here growing in a pot of salt. And so I'm going to do this again multiple times. I'm going to go ahead and fill it up, let it fully drain, fill it up, let it drain. I may go ahead and add a little bit of a long-term fertilizer to this, which are a lot of times come in the little beads or the little granules, and you'll pop these in here and then you'll water. That way it sinks them inside the soil and mixes that in. And then after I've done that a few times, I'm going to go ahead and take this, put this inside the bowl. And then I'm going to fill up this bottom bowl, and I'm going to let that sit and soak. And that is going to wick this water up into that pot and basically saturate any of this soil that is still not saturated. And once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and pull this pot off. I'm going to empty the water that's in there, because it's got salts and things like that that have dissolved and moved out of the pot. And then I'm going to place my pot back into that tray. And then I'm going to reposition this back into the slot where it goes, wherever that is in the house. So anyway, guys, it's not a difficult process, guys. It's really, really easy once you see somebody do it and you know how to follow it and you know how it works. But this will prevent you guys from having a lot of issues with your plants not surviving. You know, people say, I've got 10 black fingers and I can't get anything to grow in my house. Well, a lot of times it's because, number one, either they're overwatering the plants, they've got them in a tray, or they buy one of those pots that has the snap-on bottoms that holds the water in the pot, and does not have a hole on the bottom of the pot, guys, all of your pots that your plants are in need to have a hole on the bottom so that that water can escape that pot, so that you can wash all of those salts out. Because if you don't wash those salts out, you're going to end up killing your plants. And so a lot of times people will overwater those plants. They'll water them, and the water can't get out the bottom, so they have no idea how much water is in that pot. And a lot of us really like our plants enough that we like to over take care of them. And so what ends up happening is they drown their plant, they rot the root system. The plant is no longer able to pull up moisture to the actual plant to do its processes to make energy, and then it dies. Or they leave it on the shelf, they pour a little bit of water in it, they walk away. They pour a little bit of water in it and walk away, and two things happen. Number one, a lot of times that soil is not fully saturated. As you guys could see when I did that, it was still dry. The soil was still dry in the center, and had only wet down to less than half an inch, and I had filled that pot up with water like 2 or 3 times. Or they pour that water into there, but they never let it actually drain out the bottom, and it fills that pot up with salt and kills your plants. So just a few ways, guys, to help you out to make sure that your plants are healthy, that are in your home, so that you can actually have plants in your home and you can tell your friends, hey, I know how to take care of indoor plants now. They don't come to my house to die. That way when somebody gifts you a plant or something, you can actually keep it alive, and you don't have to come up with some crazy explanation later why you weren't able to keep it alive. So anyway, I hope this helps you guys. I hope this helps you to keep your plants healthy, to get them watered so that they begin growing instead of just dying. And hope you enjoyed the video. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, if you would go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you end up not liking the channel later on and it doesn't have things that are helpful for you, you can always unsubscribe. But if you would go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you liked the video, guys, give it a thumbs up. It helps us out considerably. It helps get the word out there, lets YouTube know that people need this information, that it's important information. And if you have friends or family that you have given them a plant and they are unable to keep the thing alive, share this video with them, guys, and get this word out there so that they can keep those plants alive and keep them a little more healthy. And but anyway, I appreciate you guys following along today. Hope you come back for the next one. Talk to you guys later. Shalom under the dome. Later.